What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again today for the trade deadline recap video. So, trade deadline's come and gone as of Friday. Had a very busy weekend Friday, Saturday, Sunday with the Wolves, so I was not able to get the video up. But here we are, trade deadline recap of everything that transpired from the day the Olympics ended, from when the roster movement resumed, up until Friday, March 6th. Yes, it was the 6th. Starting off at the top of the board, we have all the trades pretty much in order. Ran out of space, so there's some that I have to go loop around with, but we'll go through trade by trade. Starting at the top, we have the Islanders and the Blues. Make this a little easier to see. The Islanders acquired Matt Luff from St. Louis in exchange for Julien Gauthier. Kind of a whatever trade there. But then Brent Kulak was traded for his second time this season. It was originally with Edmonton. He got moved to Pittsburgh. Then with Pittsburgh, he got moved to Colorado in exchange for Samuel Girard and a 2028 second-round pick. I think this is a fantastic move for Pittsburgh. Colorado was in a spot where they didn't have the money to keep Girard. Pittsburgh does have that money, and they pick up a 2028 second-round pick with that. Surprised the pick is that high when I think Pittsburgh not only gets the better player, but the better pick. So it's interesting. That's an absolute win for Pittsburgh. Roman Schmidt gets traded to Minnesota in exchange for Boris Kachuk. That's kind of a whatever. Connor Murphy traded to Edmonton for a 2028 second-round pick. That was a trade that I had predicted. Murphy was going to go to Edmonton. So to see that go through showed me that I was onto something. Then what the heck was this? Michael McCarron, fourth-line center at best, a 2028 second-round pick going back to Nashville from Minnesota. Minnesota must think Michael McCarron is the guy because that price was kind of insane, and it set the market at something I don't think many people were expecting. So McCarron goes to Minnesota for a second going to Nashville. Then Nashville decides, okay, we're selling everything. Cole Smith goes to Vegas for a 2028 third-round pick. That's another fourth-liner. And a prospect called Seedoff. Nashville coming out on the good end of that side as well. Vancouver gets a 2027 second and a 2029 fourth in exchange for Tyler Myers going to Dallas. Not a half-bad return. Calgary and Utah make a big deal. Utah making a big splash. They go out and get Mackenzie Weegar from Calgary in exchange for Oli Mata, Castagna, and three 2026 second-round picks. So Calgary loading up on this year's second round. Utah has a ton of picks just from years and years of accumulating draft picks. That's why I want the Hawks to keep accumulating draft picks so they can pull off a move like that in the future. So for Weegar, I think that's a pretty good deal, and I think Utah comes out with a pretty solid defenseman and a really solid top four if you think about it. You have Sergachev, you have Dursey, you have guys in that lineup, and yet young guys like Simashev and Boot and those younger guys, Maliu, those young guys coming up. I think that's a really good move for Utah. Nashville then gets a 2027 fifth-round pick for Blankenberg going to Colorado. Kind of a whatever deal, but still Nashville getting another draft pick. Then we go to another trade that I kind of predicted, kind of not. Chicago gets Mangiapane and a 2027 first. I expected them to get Mangiapane. I did not expect them to get a first. In exchange for Jason Dickinson and Colton Dock going to Edmonton. I thought Dickinson would go to Pittsburgh. He ends up going to Edmonton in two separate deals, so it ends up kind of being Mangiapane, a 2027 first, and a 2028 second in exchange for Murphy, Dickinson, and Dock. I'll take that. Vegas gets Nick Dowd, and Washington gets Vickman, a 2029 second, and a 2027 third. Again, for fourth liners, the price is kind of insane. And then the third liner, talk about a third liner. If you think that's a fourth liner, Nick Waugh goes to Colorado in exchange for a 2027 first round pick and a 2026 fifth going to Toronto. So Toronto's selling a piece at the deadline here. And that wasn't all they would sell. Minor deal here, San Jose gets Jet Wu while Vancouver acquires Jack Thompson. Kind of whatever. Florida, minor sell here. They get a 2026 seventh round pick in exchange for Jeff Petrie. Of course, their seventh round pick this year is with Chicago. So that's where that is. Minnesota beefing up. Minnesota was very active at this year's deadline. Nashville selling off more. They get a 2026 third-round pick in exchange for Michael Bunting going to Dallas. Dallas was rumored in on Evander Kane. That ended up being the guy that they went with in Bunting. LA was one of those teams. LA and Ottawa are in similar situations. They didn't sell, but they didn't buy. They kind of did both. LA gets a 2026 second and third from Ottawa in exchange for Warren Foegele going back to Ottawa and a 2026 third. Detroit reacquires David Perron after they previously had him. Perron's been to St. Louis 3 times, Detroit twice. Ottawa gets a 2026 fourth round pick. Columbus gets Connor Garland. Vancouver trades him before his no movement clause kicks in July 1st. Vancouver gets back a 2028 third and a 2026 or a 2028 second and a 2026 third. The fact they got more, Colorado got more for Nick Waugh than Vancouver did for Connor Garland tells me a lot. Such as what the hell. Buffalo gets Sam Carrick, and again, they're just paying these prices for these fourth line guys. 2026 third and a 2026 sixth going back to the Rangers. That wasn't the only deal Buffalo made that night. It's also weird to see Buffalo buying at the deadline. I haven't seen that since 2011, and I didn't follow the trade deadline in 2011. I was 6 or 7 years old, unironically. Logan Stanley and Luke Shen also get shipped off to Buffalo. Winnipeg gets back Jacob Bryson, Isaac Roseanne of Buffalo. He was a first round pick of Buffalo's. A 2027 second and a 2026 fourth round pick going to Winnipeg. Then the big shocker. The big shocker deal, what happened at 1 a.m. on the night of the night before the deadline. It was 1 a.m. that Friday. John Carlson, longtime Washington Capital, traded to Anaheim for a 2026 first and a 2027 third. Anaheim's defense loaded now, to say the least. Carlson getting a chance to win a cup in Anaheim. We'll see if he goes back to Washington in the offseason, but truly a shocker of a move there. Then this is where the cutoff is and the actual trade deadline began. Philadelphia acquires David Jiricek in exchange for Bobby Brink going to Minnesota. Jiricek I think Minnesota gave up 4 draft picks and a guy to get him from Columbus, and then they just sold them off for middle six guy and Bobby Brink. That's great asset management by Billy Guerin. Of course, I'm kidding. But Brink, we'll see if he can provide. He reminds me of kind of Justin Brazeau acquisition that Minnesota acquired the previous year. The only move Boston really made, they acquired Rizzo and Gendron for going to Philadelphia, was Harrison and Edward. Minor league deal involving 4 minor league players, of which I knew none of them. Minnesota then acquired Nick Foligno. Chicago did right by their captain. This is the reason I didn't make a trade video on Foligno. He was acquired for future considerations, which is going to be nothing. So he gets to go and try to win a cup with his brother, probably before he retires. And it's where I expected Foligno to go. So 2 of the players the Hawks had that were impending free agents, I got right, so I'm happy about that. Minnesota then, in response, also took in future considerations after trading it to Chicago. They sent Vinny Hinostroza to Florida, which I believe is the second stint now in Florida. I think that's for the roster spot. Then we go back to the top up here. Corey Perry, kind of a interesting situation here, said, I'm not waiving my no-trade clause. At least it was reported. And then we find out he's being traded to Tampa Bay. 2028 second-round pick going back to LA for Corey Perry, going back to Tampa. Second stint in Tampa, we'll see how this goes. Tampa's probably going to the final. Detroit picks up a 2026 third as they part ways with their longtime prospect in Elmer Soderblom, the 6'8" brother of Arvid Soderblom, the Blackhawks goaltender. We'll see if Pittsburgh can get his career going. He just has not developed at the NHL level as everyone expected. We'll see if he can get his tires rolling in Pittsburgh. We'll have the opportunity to do it. Then the blockbuster of the day. Chicago acquires Derek Pouliot in exchange for Aiden Thompson going to the New York Rangers. Again, why would I make a trade video on this? Aiden Thompson has not played an NHL game. Derek Pouliot is 32 and in the minors. That was a trade for the sake of making a trade, it felt like. Then Anaheim trades Ryan Strome to Calgary for a 2027 7th-round pick. That's a pure cap dump for Anaheim and a pure cap pickup for Calgary, because another big move was coming from Calgary, which we'll get to. The only move Carolina made at the deadline, of course, as working for the Wolves, there was worry about Bradley Nadeau being moved, possibly Felix Ungersorum. Those were the 2 that really stuck out of, if they could be moved, then the Wolves' season could really start going downhill. No, they acquired Nick Delorier, and that was it, for a 2027 7th-round pick. So Carolina, they think their roster's pretty good. They add some toughness in Delorier. We'll see if that's all they need. I really thought they were going to go all in Robert Thomas, and it's rumored they were all in on Vinny Trocheck, but the price ended up being too high. And of course, Trocheck was not moved at the deadline. Boston acquires Lucas Reichel, who's on his third team this year, second time being traded, for a 2026 sixth-round pick going to Vancouver. And then after I'd say it was the Chicago and New York deal, after this deal, the deadline ended. All of these trades came out after the deadline had already ended, so it was bizarre. But Detroit picks up Justin Falk as St. Louis then sold off a bunch of people. Justin Hall, Buchelnikov, a 2026 first and a 2026 third that they originally acquired up here from Pittsburgh. That's the same third-round pick that they acquired there. That ends up all going to St. Louis in exchange for Justin Falk going to Detroit. Washington acquires Timothy Liljegren from San Jose in exchange for a 2026 fourth-round pick. Of course, Liljegren now gets to go play with Rasmus Sandin in Washington. They were partners for a bit in Toronto. We'll see if they can reunite that chemistry. Buffalo, minor buy for the fourth line here. They acquire Tanner Pearson from Winnipeg in exchange for a 2026 seventh-round pick. St. Louis wasn't done either. The New York Islanders acquire Braden Shen in exchange for Jonathan Drouin, going back to St. Louis, Gidloff, who's a goaltending prospect, another first-round pick, a 2026 first, and a 2026 third-round pick as well. So St. Louis, 2 firsts, 2 thirds in this draft right there from 2 players. That's a pretty good haul, I'd say so. And not to mention, I think they had another move at some point on the board, or am I just going crazy? I think I'm going crazy. Calgary then gets Othman, who just hasn't got his career started with the Rangers. Going the other way is Battaglia, which I assume is the son of Bates Battaglia. Calgary, then another big deal. Colorado reacquires Nazem Kadri and a 2027 fourth-round pick. I believe Calgary retained 20%. Victor Olofsson, Curran, a 2028 first and a 2027 second goes the way of Calgary. So Calgary capitalizing on Kadri's value for his age, still playing well into his mid-30s. So we'll see how Kadri does in his return to Colorado. Of course, last time he played there, they won a Stanley Cup, and the last time he was in uniform for them. Then we have Ottawa getting Graham Clark in exchange for Washington getting Bon Giovanni, another minor league deal there. And as you can tell, I started running space on the board, so I started going this way. LA acquires Scott Laughton. In exchange, Toronto gets a 2026 third-round pick. Washington acquires David Kampf. Vancouver gets another 2026 sixth-round pick, so they got a couple, one from Boston, one from Washington. And then, last but not least, Seattle, which was blocked here, they acquire Bobby McMahon from Toronto for a 2027 second and a 2026 fourth-round pick. So, a lot of weird moves at this year's deadline, I will say. Some teams, not a lot of teams that are all in, aside from Buffalo. Edmonton really did. Islanders made an all-in move. Detroit, kind of. You would never know Carolina was all-in with the move they made. Vegas, kind of pedestrian. They acquired Cole Smith and, Nick Dowd, but they have a solid roster all around, so I guess that makes sense. Minnesota, definitely all in. Petrie, they already acquired Quinn Hughes, getting McCarron, Foligno, Brink, so yes. And Anaheim, I think Carlson was a huge pickup for them. But they shipped off Ryan Strome, so I don't know. But yeah, so that was all the trades made. Couple re-signings. Sherwood stays in San Jose, 5 years, $5.75 million deal. Nedeljkovic also getting a 2 years by $3 million contract. Anaheim re-signs Ryan Poehling, 4 years by $3.75 million. Ethan Frank re-signs in Washington for 2 years, $2 million. Bussy from Carolina, or Bussy, should have been with the Wolves this year. Ended up being too good to be with them. 3 years by $1.9 million. Seattle extends their captain and Jordan Eberle, 2 years by $5.5 million. And the Islanders re-sign Peugeot, 3 years by $4.85 million. Waivers. Seattle put Cartier on waivers. It's a shame. I thought he was going to I thought he would be something in Seattle. He ends up going to the Rangers off waivers. St. Louis puts Robbie Fabry on waivers. He goes to Minnesota. Vegas puts Cole Reinhardt. He goes to Florida. Tampa Bay puts Curtis Douglas. He goes to Vancouver. And New Jersey puts Luke Glendening, Philadelphia, he goes to Philadelphia. And then free agent signings, Matthew Joseph goes to LA after having his contract mutually terminated by St. Louis. And Louis Domingue signs in Florida as the third goaltender. That happened before the deadline, so everyone thought Bobrovsky was going to get moved. Doesn't end up being moved. A lot of names not moved. Evander Kane, Vinny Trocheck, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou. A lot of the top 10 names on the market didn't end up actually being moved. Bobrovsky. So it was a very weird deadline. It didn't feel like a normal trade deadline. The big moves kind of had already happened. I mean, there were a couple that came out after the deadline, but it's more fun when it's during the deadline. So, yeah, that's really all there is to cover. Tell me down below what you think your team, how you think your team did at how your team did at the deadline. How do you think they did? Who do you think really added? Who do you think really lost here? For the teams that did go all in, do you see hope for teams like Buffalo to make a push in the playoffs? Or how about the Islanders who acquired Brayden Schenn, or Detroit? Teams that haven't been to the playoffs in a while, do you think they're going to be able to do something in them? Is kind of the question here. And for those who have been in the playoffs for a while, Edmonton, Vegas, do you think they'll flame out against these new teams, or do you think experience will push them through into the later rounds opposed to these newbie teams? Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.